program Quranic Reflections. Today marks our third session. We're walking through Surah Kahf. So we'll start with a brief recap of what we have learnt so far in the previous two sessions. Surah Kahf, chapter 18 of the Quran, has 110 verses, and we've looked at two ahadith which mention the virtues of this blessed surah. Number one, Surah Kahf it's a spiritual guide and a light for the person who regularly recites this surah. In a hadith of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has narrated that whoever recites Surah Kahf on a Friday, a light will shine for him between the two Fridays. So I urge my beautiful listeners and myself to try to embed a habit within your families to recite Surah Kahf on a Friday. And if the whole surah's quite overwhelming because it's quite long, start with something small. Start with the first 10 ayahs and the last 10 ayahs and gradually build up to trying to finish the whole surah on a Friday. And the second virtue associated to this surah is that it is a protection from ad-Dajjal for the one who regularly recites it and the one who memorizes the first 10 ayahs of the surah, where the Prophet ﷺ has narrated that whoever memorizes 10 verses from the beginning of Surah Kahf will be protected from ad-Dajjal. We learned that one of the greatest tools of Dajjal will be his ability to distort reality and twist the truth and present it as falsehood and vice versa. So this surah it becomes like a tool for clarity during times of confusion, during times of chaos, where a person needs clarity. And this surah is designed to provide that for the person who recites it and reflects upon it regularly. We mentioned that this surah has 4 stories which revolve around the theme of tests and trials. And they teach us how to keep ourselves grounded when we are tested in one of these themes. And Dajjal, when arrives to this world, will be using these tools to actually manipulate the people, manipulate the masses. And if we do not know how to rise above these tests or trials, we will fall into the deceptions of the Dajjal. So it's very important that as listeners and as readers of Quran, we try to derive the benefits from these stories and how we are supposed to hold on to how we're supposed to hold on to these lessons when we are tested with one of these trials. And the 4 stories deal with, number 1, the test of religious persecution, and the story mentioned was Ashabul Kahf, the sleepers of the cave. The second story, which we covered last week, was based on the tests and trials of wealth and what we should do when we are tested and trialed with abundance of wealth or restriction of wealth. How do we keep ourselves grounded? And let's start with some of the lessons that we learned. The trials of religious persecution, which was the story of Ashabul Kahf. We learned that we should find our cave during testing times, especially times when faith is being tested. Have your cave, find your cave. It might be a masjid, it might be a group of individuals that remind you about your faith, about Allah and the messengers. Just have your cave. You need to know what your cave is when you are feeling a little bit low or tested in your faith, because that will rise you, that will ground you in your faith. Number 2, seek like-minded people and huddle together. Stick together, just like the Ashabul Kahf. They were a group of young boys who went against the status quo, who went against what the people around them were doing. What did they do? They grouped together with like-minded people. Why? Because during testing times, when your faith is being tested, when you feel like the world is against you, your like-minded people will keep you sane. They'll keep you afloat. They'll remind you that you'll be okay. Number 3, have a plan. Have your exit plan. Just like Ashabul Kahf, their plan was to retrieve to the cave. And once you have your plan, trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in what you have planned, and then you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who ultimately controls everything. So you kind of elevate it to him to execute your plan and to keep you safe. Number four, to remember that Allah will change the law of natures. Allah will provide hidden miracles for the one who has istiqamah, firmness upon the truth. Right, so our bit is to hold on to the truth, be a little bit brave and courageous, speak the truth, and Allah's istiqamah and firmness will descend upon our hearts. So these were some of the lessons we derived from the first story of Ashab al-Kahf. The second story, which we covered last week, was about the story about the man with two gardens who was tested with abundance of wealth. And some of the lessons that we derived, how do we ground ourselves when we have abundance of wealth, right? Because the Dajjal will come and test us with abundance of wealth. And if we are dazzled and if we are impressed by abundance of wealth to the point that we forget where it comes from, it is a problem. So how do we ground ourselves? Remember, having wealth and having abundance is not a problem. It's actually a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, losing your way amidst this abundance, it's a problem. So how do we ground ourselves? We remember our humble origins. Just like the friend reminded his friend that, have you forgotten what your humble origins were? He is the one who created from you drop like sperm. So know your humble origins. Where did you come from? Who nourished you when you were a baby? Number two, gratitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything good that you have, any skills that you have, anything that you feel like you excel in. It doesn't have to be abundance of actually monetary value. Whatever you have skills in, whether it's your knowledge, whether it's your intelligence, whether it's a skill that you have, which you're particularly good at, link it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not take credit for it. Number three, ground yourself so you don't get arrogant in your abundance. And the advice was say, Masha Allah, la quwwata illa billah. Associate all the strength and the power to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And know that wealth isn't an indication that Allah is happy with you. We tend to have this false image that, if someone has abundance of wealth or status, that maybe Allah prefers them over someone who doesn't. That is not the measure of how Allah favors people. Yes, if you are grounded in faith, and you use these blessings for Allah and His cause and in righteousness, definitely it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if it takes you away, then actually it becomes a source of test and a punishment. This brings us now to the third story, which we're going to cover from ayah number 60 onwards of Surah Kahf. Now this third story is a story that revolves around Musa alayhi salam and Al-Khidr. Now, this is a story that talks about the test of knowledge. How should one deal with knowledge? And if you are tested with it, how should we ground ourselves? And what can happen if we are too arrogant in thinking that we know everything? Before we can begin ayah number 60, I'm going to narrate an hadith which gives us a little bit of a background to the story of Musa alayhi salam and Al-Khidr. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, it's a very lengthy hadith, where the Prophet said Musa got up to deliver a speech before the children of Israel. And he was asked, who is the most learned person among the people? Now, if you know a little bit about children of Israel, they had a habit of asking very strange questions, which used to get them in a lot of trouble. Sometimes they made sense, sometimes they didn't. So they just asked Musa ﷺ, who has the most knowledge amongst us? Musa ﷺ at that time replied, I am. This wasn't an acknowledgement of arrogance. Prophets are not arrogant, they do not sin. He came to a logical conclusion. I am one of the greatest prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has spoken to me, so who can have more knowledge than a prophet? So he gave a practical answer that I am. However, Allah rebuked him because he did not refer the knowledge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the prophets are held on a higher standard than normal people. Musa alayhi salam did not say this out of arrogance or because he thought he was better than the rest. But Allah holds the prophets to a better standard. They set a standard for the people. So even when they make harmless errors, Allah teaches them a lesson and Allah calls them account. So Allah didn't like this answer. So Allah revealed to Musa alayhi salam that at the junction of two seas there is a servant of ours who is more learned than you. Take a fish and put it in a vessel and then set out. And where you lose the fish, you will find him. So Musa took a fish, put it in a vessel, and set out along with his boy servant Yusha bin Nun, peace be upon him, till they reached a rock on which they both lay down their heads and slept. The fish moved vigorously in the vessel and got out of it and fell into the sea, and there it took its way through the sea straight, as in a tunnel. Allah stopped the flow of water on both sides of the way created by the fish, and so that the way was like a tunnel. When Musa got up, his companion forgot to tell him about the fish, and so they carried on their journey during the rest of the day and the whole night. The next morning, Musa said to his boy servant, right? So this is the backdrop to the story and the ayahs we're going to basically cover now, inshallah. So ayah number 60. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذ قال موسى لفتاه لا أبرح حتى أبلغ مجمع البحرين أو أمضي حقبا. Musa alayhi salam said to his servant Yusha bin Nun. So Yusha bin Nun later on becomes a prophet for the children of Israel. I shall journey on until I reach a point where the two seas meet, though I may march for ages. Now a point of note here is that O Amdiya Huqaba, meaning he was willing to travel a very long distance to meet this person because he was eager to learn from him. Subhanallah, a point of reflection is that how eager Musa alayhi salam was for the knowledge and to understand this knowledge. Now, this wasn't his journey to figure out, oh, who is this person that Allah has given more knowledge to than me. It wasn't a knowledge of basically, I'm the greatest prophet. Who's this other person who has more knowledge? This was a journey of wanting to learn from someone who Allah had bestowed knowledge that he did not know. So a point of reflection is, how far are we willing to go to learn things about Allah, about the religion, about what benefits us really? How far do we take? That's like the first lesson to derive. The second lesson to derive is, subhanAllah, the humbleness and the humility of Musa alayhi salam. Now there's no doubt Musa alayhi salam in ranks was a greater prophet amongst the 5 prophets, which are Adam alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. These are known as the greatest prophets that have come to mankind. But despite his greatness, his humility was, I'm going to go and learn from another person. He's not arrogant in what he knows. So how do we ground ourselves that there's always something we can learn from another person, even though they seem lesser in probably intelligence than us, lesser in knowledge than us, lesser in probably degrees that we've acquired, lesser in, I don't know, whatever kind of worldly standards that we have. Someone is always out there to teach us a lesson. Maybe they're teaching us a lesson about character. Maybe they're going to teach us a lesson about how we should speak. Maybe they're going to teach us a lesson about how we should react. There's always someone out there that will teach you something, and you can derive something from them to be a better person. So how do you ground yourself and not be arrogant with what you know? Is that assume that there's always someone there that will teach you. Even your children or students, right, will teach you something. They will teach you something. So have that open-mindedness, have that humility, that there's whoever I come across is there, so I can learn something from them. So ayah number 61. فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَجْمَعَ بَيْنِهِمَا نَسِيَ حُوتَهُمَا فَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلَهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ سَرَبًا. But when they reached the junction between the two seas, they forgot their fish, and it took its way into the sea and disappeared from sight. So what happened was that as Musa alayhi salam and Yusha bin Nun took this very grand journey. Now some Mufassirin say actually Huqba, this ayah mentioned, ayah number 60, this word meant a very long journey, thousands of miles. Some say it was a journey of 1 year, and some say actually more than 1 year. The point was the journey was very, very hard. It was it's full of turmoil and exhaustion. So they took a break, and Musa alayhi salam fell asleep. And at this point, the fish that they were carrying was a dead fish. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had commanded Musa alayhi salam, take a fish with you in a vessel or in a bag or in a bowl. And the moment this fish comes to life and jumps into the sea, that is where you go to find Al-Khidr, this person that knows this knowledge more than you. Musa alayhi salam fell asleep. The fish came to life and jumped into the water, and it basically disappeared into the two waters. Yusha bin Nun witnessed this but had forgotten to tell Musa alayhi salam. فلما جاوز قال لفتاه آتنا غداءنا لقد لقينا من سفرنا هذا نصبا. And after they had marched on for some distance, Musa said to his servant, bring us our midday meal, for indeed لقد لقينا من سفرنا هذا نصبا. For indeed we have been worn out, we are exhausted by this our journey. Musa alayhi salam was absolutely shattered after this journey. He was walking and walking, waiting for the fish to jump into the sea as an indication that he needs to stop walking. But so he's exhausted. He's asked his servant to bring out the fish. And the point of wisdom, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-alim, could have told Musa alayhi salam directly that at this point, at this day, you're going to stop walking, and this is a sign. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not decree that for Musa alayhi salam. He wanted him to work hard for this journey. He wanted him to do his part. Not every answer is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to walk the journey of life to learn lessons. Right? Sometimes the answer that's given to you won't teach you the lessons that the journey that you take will give you. So Musa alayhi salam is upon this journey of finding. And he did question. Right? Submit now what was right now. قال أرأيت آية number 63 إذ أوينا إلى الصخرة فإني نسيت الحوت وما أنسانيه إلا الشيطان أن أذكر واتخذ سبيله في البحر عجبا. Said the servant, do you recall, so Yusha bin Nun says to Musa alayhi salam, do you recall when we took ourselves to the rock for a rest? There I forgot the fish, and none but shaitan made me forget, and it took its way into the sea. How strange. Now Yusha bin Nun kind of admits here that on my days, I remember now, when we went for the rest by the rocks, I did see the fish in a strange way come to life and jump into the sea, but shaitan made me forget. Now the next ayah is very interesting to note how Musa alayhi salam responds. Ayah number 64. قال ذلك ما كنا نبغ فارتد على آثارهما قصصا. Musa alayhi salam said, that is the place we were seeking. So they turned back, retracing their footsteps. Take a note. Not one word of reprimand to his servant boy. Not one word of rebuking. Not one word of why did you do this? Why did you forget? We've exhausted myself. I've taken this extra steps. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. A lesson for myself and for the dear listeners that if we are parents, if we are teachers, if we are elders in the community, we need to get into the habit of not rebuking the youngsters so much. The Prophet ﷺ is known for actually, Anas radiallahu anhu said, I stayed with the Prophet 10 years and never once did he say to me, why haven't you done this and why did you do it this way and why has this not happened? Meaning that be easygoing. Be easygoing. Musa alayhi salam has been traveling for God knows how many months, how many days. Feet worn out, thirsty, hot desert, scorching sun, hungry. Right? If he chose to reprimand the boy, you don't understand, right? We don't understand because he had to walk all the way back, God knows how many miles. But none of that. Musa alayhi salam accepted and basically traced his footsteps. Ayah number 65. فَوَجَدًا عَبْدًا مِنْ إِبَادِنَا آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً مِنْ إِنْدِنَا وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. And found one of our servants on whom we had bestowed our mercy and whom we had endowed with knowledge of our own. So at this point now, Musa alayhi salam comes to meeting with Al-Khidr. Now Al-Khidr is this. The Mufassirin say, the scholars say that he was also another prophet, okay, which was sent during the times of Musa alayhi salam for a group of people. Now, this is not a strange phenomenon. We know that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the only prophet sent during the times of Makkah, and he's been sent to all nations, to all races, to all tribes, to all countries, to all types of people, right? Now, previous nations, it was quite common to have multiple prophets at the same time because they were sent to a certain tribe, to a certain people. So, for example, we know when Ibrahim alayhi salam was around, we know that Lut alayhi salam was also around. And we know that during Isa alayhi salam, he had his cousin Yahya alayhi salam around him as well. So it's not a strange phenomenon to have more than one prophet around at the same time in the world. So Al-Khadr was also a prophet of his time, and his name means green. Al-Khadr comes from green, and they say it was green. It was like a nickname because he was really blessed. So wherever he went, whatever he touched, whatever kind of land he visited, became so abundant, in the sense that there'll be a lot of abundance, whether it's abundance in wealth, abundance in knowledge, abundance is just, he was just very blessed wherever he went with his people and land. So his name became Al Khadr. So this is the meeting point of Musa alayhi salam and Al Khadr. And they introduce themselves and they say قال له موسى هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا. Ayah number 66. Musa said to him, may I follow you on the understanding that you will teach me something of the wisdom you have been taught. Sorry, I'm going to go back to ayah number 65. I've just remembered something. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا مِنْ إِبَادِنَا, and found one of our servants, آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً, and we have bestowed on him, as in Al-Qadr, mercy, مِنْ عِنْدِنَا وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ, and then Allah says he bestowed him with his knowledge. Now it's very important that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Qadr with the quality of mercy first, and then he says he bestowed knowledge on him. And so the lessons that we derive from this is that knowledge by itself, knowledge which is void without rahmah, without mercy, it's a problem, right? So if you have knowledge but you don't have elements of mercy towards your subjugates or the people that you have, it's a problem, because then it follows with arrogance, it follows with harshness, it becomes about right and wrong, it's about being the better one. So knowledge without mercy doesn't bring about benefit. If someone has only mercy but no knowledge, there's still benefit, because a person who's merciful will still try to bring about good around people. They will let go, they will be kind, they will be helpful. So the best combination is to have mercy and knowledge to be a real driver of change. And then ayah number 66, قال له موسى هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا. Musa said to him, may I follow you on the understanding that you will teach me something of the wisdom you have taught. So a point to note is that Musa alayhi salam is the greater prophet in terms of standards, but look at the etiquettes of Musa alayhi salam. He seeks permission to join Al-Khadr, to join him on this journey. Now we're going to take a short break. I'll leave you reflecting upon these ayahs. See you shortly. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, I've got 30 seconds. قال له okay, ayah number 67. قال إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا. The other answered, you will not be able to have patience with me. Okay, so Al-Khadr responds to Musa alayhi salam, what I'm going to go and the journey I'm about to take, you won't be able to be patient with me. So he puts a disclaimer there for Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam, if we know much about him, is known for his impulsive behavior. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. So I left you on ayah number 66, where Musa alayhi salam asked Al-Khadr, may I follow you on the understanding that you will teach me something of the wisdom you have been taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Al-Khadr then answered, قَالَ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. The other answered, you will not be able to have patience with me. It's a disclaimer from Al-Khadr to Musa alayhi salam, because the journey he was about to take and what he was about to execute was going to have some very difficult twists to it. And if anyone knows the character Musa alayhi salam, he cannot stand injustice. He has to speak up when something doesn't make sense to him. And subhanAllah, this was like a befitting kind of, I suppose, journey for Musa alayhi salam, when he had to take this journey with Al-Khadr. And Khadr then says, alayhi salam, وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. For how can you be patient with something which you cannot fully comprehend? So he actually empathizes with Musa alayhi salam here. He goes, look, you won't be able to be patient. You won't be able to be patient with me. And to be honest, how will you? Because it's not something that you will be able to comprehend. It's going to be strange things happening. So he's empathizing and sympathizing Musa alayhi salam. A lesson for us: if we're dealing with people and they cannot see our point of view, be patient, be merciful. Do not be irritable. Do not scoff. Do not mock. Do not sigh. Be patient and try to understand what angle people might be coming from. قال ستجدني إن شاء الله صابرا ولا أعصي لك أمرا. Musa alayhi salam replied, you will find me patient, inshallah, and I shall not disobey you in anything. قال فإن اتبعتني فلا تسألني عن شيء حتى أحدث لك منه ذكرا. The other said, well then, if you are to follow me, do not question me about anything I do until I mention it to you myself. Right? That's the kind of clause Al-Khadr puts for Musa alayhi salam. Yes, you can follow me, but do not question, do not intervene, do not interject with anything that you see. I will explain it to you at some time, but just let the events unfold. Now, I'm a little bit apprehensive in going through some of these kind of stories that we're going to mention, because I'm not sure how they might be perceived. So let's see, but just remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His word is perfect. It's perfect, and His word is perfect, and it is the truth. So any kind of deficiencies I have in explaining that, that's on me. But let's see, Bismillah. So they carry on. فانطلق حتى إذا ركبا في السفينة خرقها قال أخرقتها لتغرق أهلها لقد جئت شيئا إمرا. And so the two went on to their way, and when they embarked, they made a hole in a boat. So there was a group of poor fishermen who kindly allowed Musa alayhi salam and Al-Khadr alayhi salam to join them on their fishing expedition. And what happens is Al-Khadr decides to axe the boat and create a hole. Musa alayhi salam cannot stand this. If you know his personality, he cannot stand injustice. He's always on the side of the poor and the needy and the oppressed. And he says, have you made a hole in this boat, in order to drown the people in it? لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا إِمْرًا. Strange indeed is what you have done. These people have been kind to us. They allowed us to join them on their boat, and you repay them by destroying the boat. What does Al-Qadr say? قال ألم أقل إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا. He replied, did I not say that you would not be able to have patience with me? He reminds him of his terms and conditions of this journey. قال لا تؤاخذني بما نسيت ولا ترهقني من أمري أسرا. Musa alayhi salam immediately says, do not take me to task, do not hold me account for something I have forgotten. Look, I just forgot. I forgot I hadn't made that promise to you, and be not hard on me on account of what I have done. Look, it's a human error. I forgot. I was impulsive. I didn't mean it. So go easy on me. Please just forgive me for this once. فانطلق حتى إذا لقي غلاما فقتله قال أقتلت نفسا زكية بغير نفس لقد جئت شيئا نكرا. And so the two went on until they came to a second scenario, until they met a certain young man, and he slew him, he killed him. Whereupon Musa alayhi salam explained he could not bear this injustice and oppression. He goes, have you just killed an innocent child with no cause of just retribution for murder? Have you just killed someone for the sake of it? It's not making sense to Musa alayhi salam. You just come across this boy and you just killed him. You've just destroyed a boat. What are you doing? It makes no sense. Foul لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا نُكْرًا. He goes, indeed, what you have done is indeed a grave crime against humanity. It's clear oppression. It's a clear sin. It's a clear injustice. Musa alayhi salam cannot bear injustice. To the point that if you know the story of Musa alayhi salam, there's two men fighting amongst Bani Israel. One seemed to be oppressing the other. Musa alayhi salam interjected, punched one of them, and as a result, one of them died. He didn't mean to kill him, but that is the nature of Musa alayhi salam. He sees something wrong, he wants to fix it. So he cannot bear this kind of perceived injustice in front of him. قَالَ أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكَ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. He replied, did I not make it clear to you that you would not be able to have patience with me? Right? Al-Khadr, it's not reprimanding Musa alayhi salam. He's just telling you, I've reminded you, look, this is going to be a hard test. You won't be able to be patient with me. You won't be able to stay quiet. قال إن سألتك عن شيء بعدها فلا تصاحبني قد بلغت من لدني عذرا. Musa said, if I question you again, do not keep me in your company, for then you would have enough excuses. You had enough excuses from me. Right, so in this case, Musa alayhi salam ends up. He didn't forget. He just basically couldn't help himself. And he puts his hand up. He goes, look, if I do it again, we can just say it's the end of our journey, because I keep on breaking the terms and conditions of what we agreed on. A lesson to derive: don't make excuses, just own up. All right, stop blaming X, Y, and Z. Say I'm sorry. Just own up to whatever thing that went wrong. Just own up to it. فانطلق حتى إذا أتيا أهل قرية استطعما أهلها فأبوا أن يضيفوهما فوجد فيها جدار يريد أن ينقض فأقام قال لو شئت لاتخذت عليه أجرا. So the third story begins, the third event. So the two went on until they came to a town where they asked his people for food, but they refused them all hospitality. So this is a customs even till now we find in our own traditions of the prophetic sunnah, is that whenever a new person or a traveller comes into a town and city, it becomes like incumbent upon the community to take care of that traveller. Right, so it's not too bad in our days. We've got shops and convenience stores, right? We've got service stations. So we're kind of probably losing that tradition. But even till now, if a guest comes to your house, it's actually mandatory to take care of the needs of that guest for up to 3 days. Right, so imagine now this travel back in the days, right? Hot, scorching deserts, water if you find it, right? Food if you hunt for it. So the travelers are extremely in need of be taken care of the locality. So these Musa alayhi salam al-Khadr turn up to this locality, and they're so stingy, they're so ill-mannered in their character, that they refuse to take care of the basic needs of water and drink, and maybe somewhere to sleep of Musa alayhi salam al-Khadr. And as they go, Khadr, they have found a wall on a point of falling. So Khadr finds a wall that's is on the verge of collapse. And they say, and he rebuilt it. Musa alayhi salam again intervenes. He says, had you wished, you could have taken payment for what you did. So it doesn't make sense to Musa alayhi salam that these people are rude, they rejected you, they refused basic needs for you. Here you are you're trying to fix their affairs, you're trying to build this wall. At least you could have said to them, look, I'll fix it for you, give us some food or something in return. قال هذا فراق بيني وبينك سأنبئك بتأويل ما لم تستطع عليه صبرا. He replied, this is the parting of ways between me and you. Now I shall explain to you the real meaning of all those events which you were unable to bear with patience. Now Al-Khadr is beginning to explain the events of what's about to happen. أما السفينة فكانت المساكين يعملون في البحر فأردت أن أعيبها وكان وراءهم ملك يأخذ كل سفينة غصبا. As for the boat, it belonged to some needy people who toiled upon the sea. So it belonged to poor fishermen who relied on their sustenance for this boat. And I desired to slightly damage it, because behind them was a tyrant king who was taking every boat by force. Right, so there was a tyrant king. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's form Al-Khadr, that there was a tyrant king who was going around from place to place seizing boats because he was seeking to expand his naval his naval military capacity, right? So if he came across this tyrant king when he saw a damaged boat, he wouldn't basically take it and would carry on, but at least the needy people would have the capacity to go and build it. So that was the reason why Al-Khadr damaged it slightly. A lesson to learn is that sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down a smaller calamity our way to prevent a greater calamity. How many stories have we seen? People missing the train, people missing the plane flights. To know that the same plane was in a plane crash later on, moments later, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us here that sometimes a smaller calamity comes your way. You might have a fall, you might have a trip, a small car accident, you might lose some money, you might lose your way driving. A smaller calamity to prevent you from a greater calamity that might have been waiting on that way. وأما الغلام فكان أبواه مؤمنين فخشينا أن يرهقهما طغيانا وكفرا فأردنا أن يبدلهما ربهما خيرا منه زكاة وأقرب رحمة. And as for the young man or the young boy, his parents are true believers. And we feared lest he should cause them much grief by his overweening wickedness and unbelief. So this boy, had he grown up, would have been an intense trial for his parents. And so we desired that their Lord grant them instead a son or a child of greater purity than him and closer in loving tenderness. Right. So it's a bit of like a strange, I suppose, to come to terms with, killing an innocent child. But remember this, right? Al-Khadr was informed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this story, whatever Al-Khadr is doing, right, we know that there is no simile to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is above his creation, but Al-Khadr is representing Allah's Qadr, right? So Al-Khadr came down to show us how Allah's Qadr works, right? How many children, for example, we know people that we know and we don't know that losing a child is one of the greatest tests for a parent. And we know so much reward waits for them, subhanAllah. But the Qadr here is that we don't know why certain things happen. Just like the parents. So in these stories, we don't really get to see the reaction of those, for example, the fishermen who basically came across their boat that was damaged, right? We can only imagine the disheartening, the sadness that they would have felt. Betrayal. We let these two men borrow a boat. This is what they did. They didn't know the tyrant king was waiting. Only when the tyrant king would have come upon them, they would have appreciated the calamity that came their way. We don't know how these parents must have felt when they had heard that the child had been killed. We can only infer. But the lesson to be learnt here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَرَدْنَا أَن يُبْدِلَهُمَا رَبُّهُمَا خَيْرًا. And we desired that the Lord that basically would have replaced it with something better. Sometimes something is taken away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it's replaced with something better for us, for our life, for our deen, for the dunya. That is what the story is telling us. So not to fixate on that Al-Khidr had killed a boy, but to fixate on the lesson that's been derived here, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says sometimes some things are taken from us for it to be replaced with something better. How many jobs maybe someone didn't get to only find out they got a better job later on? How many marriage rejections did someone go through before finding a righteous, the perfect spouse for themselves? How many, homes did you're trying to buy a home, how many offers got rejected before you find the perfect home, right? Something rejected or taken away for it to be replaced with something better. Then وَأَمَّا الْجِدَارُ فَكَانَ لِغُلَامَيْنِ, ayah number 82. And as for the wall, it belonged to 2 orphan boys living in the town, and beneath it was buried a treasure belonging to them. Their father had been a righteous man. So your Lord has willed it that when they come of an age, they should dig up the treasure by your Lord's grace. I did not do any of this of my own accord. This is the real meaning of those events which you were unable to bear with patience. Now remember this town they went on. So evil, so stingy, that they couldn't even offer water to their travelers, right? Which was common kind of good that all communities did. What do you think would have come of the treasure if they had come to know of these 2 orphan boys? And the point of note is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا, that their father had been a righteous man. That the scholars say that That if we are worried about leaving behind young children, young families, and we're wondering what will happen to them when we go, the point of note is that work on yourself. Work on yourself, become a better person, do good deeds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of your young dependents if something happens to you. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected the wealth of these two children, two orphan boys, because of the righteousness and the piety of their father. Right? And Allah had decreed that once they reach an age of maturity or puberty or whatever, they would able to extract their wealth themselves and take benefit of it. Again, we don't get to see the reaction of the widow or the orphan boys who's going through this hardship. We can only infer what they were thinking. Oh, it's poverty, it's hardship, how I'm going to raise them. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, a delay in something, it's not rejection. That's the lesson here. A delay in something is not rejection. It's just waiting to be answered in a time or a place when it's most befitting for you. And then Al-Qadr puts that disclaimer: I did not do مَا فَعَلْتَهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي. I did not do any of this on my own accord. Remember, knowledge. Attribute it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to stay grounded, not to become arrogant. ذَلِكَ تَعْوِيلُ مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا. This is the real meaning of all events which you are unable to bear with patience. Right? And this is mankind when trials are coming. When a car gets damaged, or when a loved one leaves this world. Okay, when we want something so badly and the answer is not coming straight away, we are impatient. Right? So in a way, Al-Khadr alayhi salam is depicting Allah's qadr. Right? Musa alayhi salam is depicting the reactions of human beings. When things are unfolding before us, we do not have the patience to see it through. Right? But to remember the lessons, that take it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that whatever Allah is decreeing in His infinite wisdom, in His infinite knowledge, is always better and best for a believer. So that marks the end of the third story, okay, which was the test of knowledge. How to deal with knowledge. And some of the gems that we kind of learned from this is that we learned the humility of Musa alayhi salam. Right? The greatest prophet of Allah was willing to travel and seek knowledge from a prophet who was lesser in probably status than him. There's always something we can learn from people around us. Always be on the hunt of that, and be humble and have enough humility to learn from those around us. Number 2, not to be arrogant about learning. Arrogance will get in the way of seeing the truth. And if this surah is going to offer us protection from Ad-Dajjal and his fitnas and his deception, we need to be grounded, not to be arrogant when we have knowledge. Have an open mind. Have a flexible brain muscle. Always be willing to learn and get to the root of things. Test on and we learn to trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's qadr. And know that whatever knowledge we have, whatever understanding we have, is just a drop of an ocean. And there is a narration of Al-Khadr and Musa alayhi salam. When they meet, he says that they see a bird pecking into the ocean. And Al-Khadr says, mine and your knowledge combined with the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is similar to this bird who's just dipped his beak into the water, and that drop represents mine and yours knowledge, and the rest, the vast sea, is the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So trust the divine wisdom, trust the divine knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when things do not make sense. It's a reminder for myself and my dear listeners, trust the divine wisdom and learn to be patient in the journey and not to be hastened with whatever life lessons Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to show us. This now brings us to the final story of Surah Kahf, which is the story of Dhul Qarnayn. So, ayah number 83 onwards. Dhul Qarnayn. Now, who was Dhul Qarnayn? And there's many interpretations about who Dhul Qarnayn is. So I invite you all to go and do some research regarding Dhul Qarnayn. But it seems like he was a powerful king who was assigned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who lived up to justice and it did not abuse his power. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him in such a dominion that he had control over vast amounts of land on earth. Okay, so this story of Dhul Qarnayn teaches us how to deal or how to ground ourselves with when we are tested with power. When we're tested with power. And what does it mean to use power in justice? And what does it mean when you use power in a form of injustice? And we don't have to look far. What the powers today are doing with their power. The amount of injustice that's been spread across the world. The amount of control of resources to subjugate the people into poverty. You know, you think you're okay to fly across people's lands and bomb them because you have the power to do so, right? So this is an example that we're living right now. Is an example of what power does when you do not use it with justice and piety. And what happens when people have power and they have no reign, when they have no moral compass. We have what we have today: utter chaos, utter disruption, utter killing of innocent lives. And here we have an example of Dhul Qarnayn, who was given much more of a dominion and power than the people today, and how he executed his justice with his people. Ayah number 83, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ويسألونك عن ذي القرنين قل سأتلو عليكم منه ذكرا. They will ask you about Dhul Qarnayn. Say, I will give you an account of him. إِنَّ مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. We established his power on the earth and gave him means to achieve anything. He was able to do whatever he wanted on this earth. He had control of the resources, he had the armies, he had the people. He was able to do whatever he wanted because of the power that Allah had granted him. فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. So he followed a certain way. So Dhul Qarnayn is going on his expeditions, finding his way around the people, just checking on how people are getting on. حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس وجدها تغرب في عين حمئة ووجد عندها قوم قلنا يا ذا القرنين إما أن تؤذب وإما أن نتخذ فيهم حسنا. And he marched westwards till when he came to the setting of the sun. The sun was setting. It appeared to him that it was setting in dark, in murky, turbid waters, and nearby he found a certain people. If he came across a certain type of people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Dhul Qarnayn, we said, you may either punish them or treat them with kindness. Right? A king has the authority to rein people in when they're committing evil. But the default of a king is to be full of mercy. Allah has given you power. Use mercy over harshness over people. قال أما من ظلم فسوف نؤذبه ثم يرد إلى ربه فيؤذبه عذابا نكرا. He replied, the one who does wrong we shall punish. Then he will return to his Lord and be sternly punished by him. So he's reiterating a just king reins people in when they're causing corruption on this earth. I will leave it here because our session has come to an end. Inshallah, we'll continue our final session next week, where we seek to finish off the Surah Kahf and take it to 110. I wish you all a lovely day. Assalamu alaikum.